we have to talk about what went down yesterday with WWE in California. For your consideration, I'm sorry, every time I hear those three words, I think of the episode of Married with Children when they're at the car wash and they can't find Al's car, and then they realize that they can't find the car because it was clean and it's now a different color because of all the dirt that was washed away. And he opens up the trunk to make sure that his Biggins magazine is still there. And what's in the trunk with it? A photo of the Bundys, and it says, for your consideration for Emmy. Family Guy did an episode also where they did a whole bunch of skits, and it would freeze and frame and say, for your consideration, Emmy. Right. Well, WWE thinks now that they could possibly win an Emmy. And yesterday at the Saban Media Center in North Hollywood, California, and for people that are going to ask, why did they do it in California? Because California, other than New York City, is the mecca as far as media goes and stuff like that. And unfortunately, with New York City, you come to New York City, and there really aren't venues where you could just show up with a short notice and have a whole bunch of media people there asking you questions. No. You go all the way to California to do it. Right. And what they did yesterday, just to summarize it for everyone who may not be aware of it, they had Braun Strowman, Nia Jax, the Bellas, Roman Reigns, Ronda Rousey, Charlotte, Sasha Banks, New Day, Naomi, Triple H, Stephanie, and Shawn Michaels there. They showed clips of the Raw 25. They showed highlights of the Mixed Match Challenge. And they showed the WWE 24 special Empowered about women in wrestling. And if you remember when we opened up this episode of Breakfast with Blassie, Mish brought up that famous line that Stephanie once said. What was it again, Mish?
Philanthropy is the future of marketing.
All right. Now, some people out there may not still understand what that means. Google it. But they recapped yesterday. They talked about WWE, just everything about the business.
Right.
Everybody got, a chance to speak to the public, that was there. Everything was filmed. I kind of felt bad for Roman Reigns because people were reporting that he got booed out of the building, which was a lie. And again, that's probably people who probably heard a podcast say it instead of doing research or looking it up yourself. But out of everything that was shown yesterday, and the whole goal of this appearance, this thing, was so for people to consider them for an Emmy for the Empowered episode on WWE 24 on WWE Network, and that was about the progression of women in wrestling.
Yeah.
And when I watched the highlights and every person speaking, and of everything that was said yesterday, one thing stuck out. And when I saw it, I kept thinking about you. I kept thinking about how you from day one, put in people's heads about Stephanie and this obsession, because it is an obsession. Mm-hmm. And I think yesterday proved that it's an obsession. Does she have heartfelt feelings about wanting to see women empowered? Absolutely. I think a lot of it is genuine. But anyone out there, go recap recently what Gail Kim said about Stephanie, that this women's evolution could have been done a long time ago. One thing stuck out yesterday, and I'd like your thoughts on it and what stuck out to you. Charlotte got the mic, and she said that wrestling is a male-dominated sport. And that's a phrase that we've heard for forever.
Right.
As soon as she said that comment, Stephanie got on the mic. Now, this is not Monday Night Raw. Right. This is at an event. No matter what that person says, you let them say it. You don't correct them, interrupt them, make comments about it. But soon as Charlotte said that this is a male-dominated sport, Stephanie got on the mic and said it was a male-dominated sport. And I saw that, and I was like, she is obsessed with wrestling to be 50-50, women and men. And I'm not saying this to be sexist. There are forms of entertainment out there that is dominated by women. Not every form of sport or entertainment has to be man, woman, 50-50. And Stephanie has this obsession that wrestling one day is going to be 50% men, 50% women. And unfortunately, in my opinion, all right, just the whole premise of wrestling and just the foundation of what it is, this is a form of entertainment and a sport that is always been from day one, enjoyed, targeted more for the male viewer. All right, just the adrenaline, just everything about it. I'll give you the floor in a second.
Okay. Yeah.
Just everything about it. It's never going to be 50-50. If it does one day be 50-50, it's got to happen organically. You want to give divas a chance? That old, hashtag. You want to give women the opportunity? I am 1,000,000% behind it. But the fans have to dictate if women should be 50-50 in the product. And if you can't just keep forcing, this is what it should be, this is what it was, this is what it is, take it or leave it, because look, the women's revolution, look at the fucking ratings and look at what's big. I'm not blaming it on the women, but what I'm saying is that everybody
ain't helping.
It ain't helping. It's not helping. And if anybody out there says that it is helping, then I'll throw this one at you. What the fuck would wrestling look like as far as ratings and numbers right now if the women didn't have the opportunity?
Right.
So she is forcing this and obsessed with it, and she is just, it's, in my opinion, it's got to happen naturally. And honestly, to me, I still think WWE wrestling, no matter how many women's matches they want to put on TV, no matter how many photos they want to put on their website that's just Ronda Rousey and Nia Jax, which I have a feeling that match is going to stick up the joint, not because of lack of work, but, like you said and Joey said back at WrestleMania time, you have 3 months to work on one match. Great. But, other than that, I mean, where's her matches on Raw? Nothing. So I still believe that it's still a male-dominated sport. I think it will remain a male-dominated sport. I think that there will be a definite women's presence that will be more than 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
30 years. Look.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thing is with this. Look, Stephanie McMahon is trying to force the WNBA on us. It's not going to work.
Well, here's where I disagree. Not to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
All right. Here's where I interrupt you. Here's the difference. You don't have men playing on a women's WNBA team. You have two separate. If she wants to have a separate product for the women, there's your WNBA. But you don't have men.
Yeah, but WWE is the NBA. So you have the NBA and the WNBA, both owned by the NBA. The NBA in this scenario is WWE. So you have women that wrestle their own matches in their own divisions versus men who wrestle in their own matches in own divisions, all underneath the same banner.
Right, but here's the thing, though. If the NBA now only had, you go to an NBA game, and now only 2/4 of it are the men playing the game, and the other 2/4 are the women playing the game. Something tells me that a lot of people are going to be like, I don't fucking want to see this. I wasn't
even looking at it like that. I was looking at it as like time-wise.
Right.
Even still, it fits the same fulcrum of your argument. It's if you projected, if you advertised and marketed and paid and put as much money as you do in the NBA as you do into the WNBA, and yet the crowds are still in favor of the NBA, then you're just hemorrhaging money for no reason other than to try and exemplify inequality that isn't demanded.
Right.
And I think that's, look, dude, I am a huge women's wrestling fan. Always have, always will be. I'm probably going to end up going to the Death Becomes Her tournament, which is a tournament based out of Sutton, Illinois. It's a death match tournament. I'm going to see women smash each other in the tits with a barbed wire baseball bat. Okay. And I'm going to probably bring my oldest there because he's kind of interested in going. I'm expecting blood from pretty things all over the place. That's what I like in women's wrestling. I like seeing women fucking beat the shit out of each other. However, I know for a fact I am a niche audience. I am a very small amount, especially with deathmatch. Not only does this asshole want to see women's wrestling, but he wants to see women's deathmatch wrestling. What the fuck? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I know where my niche is, but at the same point, I recognize that women in the past have been treated poorly by the company, by WWE. They've been treated like idiots. You know, women have been degraded down to sexual toy things, and I understand that. But the thing is not all women want to become super athletes either. Mm-hmm. Not every woman. Some women like being sexual toy things. You know, not all. Some do, some don't. But the thing is that you need to keep the perspective of, look, this has always been a side product to the main product. Mm-hmm. I would compare the women, and I'm sure that there would be women out there that would be upset by this, but I would compare women to the cruiserweight division. I would compare women to the hardcore division. They are a division of the main product, and the main product is men. Now, that's not to sit there and say that women have not invaded the main product before, Beth Phoenix in China, you know, and they've done well for themselves in a variant, but those are the exceptions to the rule.
That's why people are upset with Carmella beating Charlotte this many times. That's why they're upset with Asuka's streak being obliterated now, because WWE realizes that you have probably 2 to 3 major women's performers. You have Charlotte, you have Ronda Rousey, who, you know, by popularity, you have to put her on that list. You have Asuka. Yeah. All right. Sasha Banks is not on that same level anymore. And, you know, look, she could be again, obviously. She's not bad. Bayley
isn't even on that same level anymore.
Right. So
she was just the champion at that right before me. Yeah.
Right. But so right now you only have 2 or 3 women that are the, you know, the Brock Lesnar, the Roman Reigns, the, you know, the Braun Strowmans. I mean, I'm saying the major headliners for the women's division. So Stephanie is in a situation now where she's like, fuck, we only have 3 women who can main event possibly WrestleMania. We have to try to make that 6, 7. So what do? We pull back Charlotte a little bit. We pull back Asuka a little bit. Ronda Rousey, you know, it's just popularity right now than anything else. I mean, obviously, you know, it seems like, you know, Ronda Rousey's career so far is destined to be, you know, like one major match every two months or so.
They don't know what they're and that could, but that all comes down to writing and booking. And, sure. And I got into a discussion with someone, you know, and I think it was on Solo's page, it might have been somewhere else, but we were talking about it, and he still believes that, you know, WWE is holding back. They're holding back. And I'm like, I don't believe it's a case of holding back anymore. I believe that they can't. It's not a case of they won't do these things. It's a case of they can't. As much as they have the tenacity to want to drive the women into the next level, into the next century, if you will, the reality is that they can't. They don't know how to write for this product because they've never done it before.
Right.
They've never done it before. Women have never been treated as okay, I'm sorry. Since the 80s, women have not been treated as athletes. And even in the 80s in WWE, that was still kind of a sham, because the reality was a lot of these girls that were wrestling around outside of WWE were apartment wrestlers, folks.
Right. It was an attraction.
Right.
I agree with you. I agree completely. But it's got to happen more organically.
And they don't know how. They have nothing to base it off of. WWE recycles storylines. They've been doing it for a very long time. All wrestling recycles storylines.
Sure.
They recycle storylines. They recycle angles. Sometimes they freshen it up by making it appear to current modern trends and stuff like that. But the reality is the storylines, you can pretty much point out a storyline that happened before that was exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that.
But women don't have that. And unfortunately, a lot of men's storylines are non-transferable to women.
Right. That's true. I agree with you 100%. It just, you know, it doesn't feel organic. And the thing is, you know, people need to understand this too. You know, I'm not saying that WWE doesn't have an overall, just a big chunk of entertainment. They do. There's something for everybody on the network. They're overall, they're solid. But you have to understand too, as the years progress, and you look at cable, TV, and you look at mainstream, the big networks, not just the ABC, CBS, not just, Fox and CNN, not just TBS and others, but there's also sports, stations, ESPN and others. And as the years go by, it feels like the main, things to watch on TV is news, reality shows, sports, and, you have your syndicated shows, but for the most part, to get the big chunk of audience, you got the sports, you got the news, you got reality shows, this and that. And when UFC is no longer on Fox, and what is Fox left with?
Right.
You know what I mean? So they don't have.
Do you believe that they're a little unhappy with? Do you think that they're having buyer's remorse? Because I see that more and more now about people talking about this Fox deal, that there are people within the company that are really looking at these ratings lately and really having buyer's remorse.
I'll tell you exactly what they have. And of course, we're just giving opinions here, but I'll tell you in my opinion exactly what it is. They had to overpay. They needed something to be the niche of their network to stand out other than syndicated shows. And when UFC is on ESPN, or if you have Monday Night Football on this network, or basketball on this network, or Major League Baseball on this network, and you're left with nothing, you don't have many choices. So they overpaid WWE big time. And WWE, because of that overpayment, now has the luxury that they can branch out even more, try things. Look, they're going to try the XFL thing, and it's no secret. WWE, didn't they buy some stock in the XFL, that they actually own part of XFL? Because now with this crazy amount of money that they inked on this TV deal, they can try XFL again, and if it fails, all right, look, we got we're worth $3-4 billion. Now losing $100 million is not really that big of a deal. It's tax right. So, but there's going to come a time where entertainment, as far as cable TV, is really going to shift into internet and streaming services.
Absolutely. Already has.
Yeah, well, when you hear the rumors that YouTube, Facebook might be interested in WWE, Amazon, they're interested, but they're interested in a way like you or I looking at brand new cars and looking at brand new cars with only $5,000 in our wallet. Or maybe $10,000 in our wallet. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll find an insane deal somewhere for $10,000. But if we wait a little while, now we'll have $20,000 in our pocket, and we'll be able to possibly afford the car. So I don't think they were ever seriously in negotiations. But down the line, streaming services is going to catch up to cable TV a lot more. And, and now, in order for cable networks to survive, they either have to grossly overpay. It's almost like when WCW used to pay wrestlers to stay home just so they wouldn't go to WWE.
Yeah.
It's like the network has to overpay for WWE so they don't leave to go to streaming service. Right. So UFC doesn't go to streaming service. Sooner or later, streaming service is going to really, they made a dent already, but they're still microscopic compared to regular network TV deals. Sure. All right. And this is what people, I've been saying this since 1997, doing, hotlines. For anybody out there that thinks the ratings don't matter, the ratings absolutely do matter, because how are these networks going to generate money to pay WWE for this TV deal? They have to get advertisers. They have to get sponsors. And what advertiser or sponsor is going to want to pay? When you do the Super Bowl and they pay $1 million per minute for an ad, The reason why they're paying that kind of money is because they got 80 million people or 40, 50 million people watching the Super Bowl. If the Super Bowl only had 2.1 million people could be like, I'm not paying $1 million for that. So sooner or later, these advertisers, how is ESPN or going to get that money back from the UFC? Ad revenue, other ways, other agreements. Fox, how are they going to get the money back? How are they going to pay for this deal? They have to make it back. Otherwise, they're going to just keep losing money. And do you realize the amount of ads that they have to spend? Not to, break even, because there's other deals that they would do, specials and other things.
Right. Well, there was already talks about them getting like a Saturday night's main event.
Yeah.
There was already, I should say rumors that they're going to get like a Saturday night's main event kind of put over to Fox. There's also rumors that they're going to do more with the tribute to the troops stuff.
Right.
So they're definitely going to get more than just SmackDown out of the deal. They're probably going to get a lot of the events, if not a majority of the events that usually aired on Raw or on USA. So I'm kind of curious about that. But even if you add in an additional, let's be fair, an additional 10 shows a year. Okay, that's a crazy amount because I don't even think it would be 10 shows. But even if they threw on an additional 10 shows a year for SmackDown, I still don't know if that's worth that amount of money.
They overpaid. No, they overpaid because, all right, just play devil's advocate. If Fox didn't sign a deal with WWE, what were they going to replace all that? What were they going to replace it with? Who could they have signed in place of it? Not UFC.
Well, they were going to hold on to UFC.
Right. Well, right. But the UFC deal was just way, they couldn't do the deal, and UFC went to ESPN.
Which is,
and there was no guarantee that UFC.
Which actually that throws me off because my whole thought process was UFC and WWE on the same network again would have been gold. Look, the first time that they were on Spike TV, neither one of them wanted to do business with each other. But those times have changed, and UFC and WWE have kind of grown up a little bit. And I think that if they had WWE and UFC, and once again, this is clearly speculation because now it's not going to happen, but my whole thought process was, man, they're already switching talent. They've already got guys from former wrestlers in UFC, and they've got former UFC guys in WWE. Man, could you imagine them both being on the same network and then sharing stuff here and there?
I'll go one better. Could you imagine if they started doing live UFC events every Monday night on ESPN?
Oh my God.
I mean that. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why that would be a mistake. Because it's not that all of a sudden you're going to have channel surfing. Yeah, you'll have some people do that.
Oh, yeah, you will. Yeah,
but
totally.
You're not, the products, you can't, the difference is you can't do like WCW and WWE in the sense that we always wondered who was going to jump ship. You're not going to have John Cena show up at UFC. You know what I'm saying? So you can't have that.
You could have him sitting in the audience.
Well, I'm talking about fighting and stuff like that.
Or maybe even doing commentary. I think that shit could be a lot of fun.
I think if they were both head to head, their ratings would suffer over it. I think that's a case where it would be interesting because could you imagine if people turned off Raw to watch UFC? I mean, those two networks, I don't think they would.
Yeah, but you don't do that in 2018 because everybody has DVR.
Yeah, I know, but again, advertisers. That's the big thing. When Dixie used to tell people,
let me ask you a question then, because this is something I don't know about advertising. I know in the old day with the Nielsen ratings and stuff like that, and then the blocks, advertisers were dictated, after the show went off the air, or after the show went to break, they would actually gauge the commercials and how many people sat through that break. Now, in 2018, with DVR technology, do the advertisers still get the pay when people watch something on DVR?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, advertising is negotiated between the network and the company that wants to advertise.
Right.
Even if you want to use the local example,
But no, what I'm saying is, do those numbers count? Like,
right,
okay, for example, after 3 days, those numbers don't count. So if you really want to fuck over WWE, but you want to watch the product, you watch it 3 days later.
Well, I look at it like this. Okay, Dixie Carter. I actually covered this recently on an episode of This Week of Wrestling History. couple of weeks ago, I think it was the anniversary, that she went on social media and she told fans that if you get a DVR TNA, please watch it within 72 hours.
Yeah.
Because she thought that rating would give them more leverage and negotiating power with the network to say, look, here's how this is our rating for DVR during a week. This is our live viewers. She then could say, look, this week total combined we had this. So when they negotiate to stay on the network, or to get, if they get any type of percentage of advertising revenue, whatever it was, I'm not saying that they did. The more viewers, the more leverage you have to negotiate. So now when a network negotiates with a company to advertise, the network will go to that company and say, WWE averages X amount of live viewers on Monday night. They also average X amount of DVRs viewers on this streaming service, on whatever the streaming service is. So the number of people who DVR, that number does come into play when a network negotiates. It's just that it's not anywhere near the level of live TV.
Right.
So yeah, it does come into play, but it's not like, that because 2 million people DVR'd it this week, that this is how much the ad is going to cost you this week. Oh yeah, 500,000 extra. No, when they give their overall portfolio, they show, okay, this is how many viewers they get live. This is the average of the DVRs per week, and this and that. And then they offer their price to the company, or they negotiate a price. But yeah, the DVRs come into play, but they don't want, let me put it like this. If you're going to get 1 million people to DVR an episode of Raw, WWE would rather have that 1 million DVR within the same week, the mentality, so they could add it as part of the average weekly numbers. They don't want 500,000 this week, 200,000 the week after, 100,000 here. And you would think that the overall numbers would still be solid, because, yeah, if 100,000 viewers of this week's Raw watched it next week, you still have the other DVRs for next week's Raw. So that's the thing that made Dixie Carter's comment sound so dumb.
Right.
But no, it's all part of the negotiating deal. But like I said, for people that think the ratings don't matter, you have Fox that's going to go to advertisers and say, hey, we got the Super Bowl, 60 million viewers, $1 million a minute. And then they say, hey, we got WWE, 2.3 million viewers. How much are they going to pay? You know what I'm saying? It's not... And wrestling is still simulated violence, and not every advertiser is going to want to advertise on wrestling.
Right.
So it's going to be really interesting. It's buyer's remorse because they overpaid.
Right.
That's what it is. And remember, they signed WWE after UFC signed with ESPN.
Yeah. No, I know.
You understand what I'm saying? So once ESPN was gone, what they needed to replace them. And not only that, their existing sponsors.
Well, they were negotiating before, to be fair.
Yeah, sure they were. They
were totally negotiating the idea. So the idea was at least kicking around somebody's can.
They had to negotiate all this time because they couldn't be left with nothing. Because remember, if Fox would have been left without UFC and didn't negotiate with WWE at all, the sponsors are going to say, we're out of here.
Right.
So that's why the deal was signed so quickly to UFC, because it didn't give a chance for their sponsors to say,
Fox is really hurting, aren't they? I mean, overall, now that they've lost ESPN, and now that pretty much 80% of the entire company's been chunked out by Disney.
Dude, ESPN is having problems too. Look at all the people that they've laid off over the last couple of years. They didn't all of a sudden come into money or inheritance. Right. There's not many big time niches left.
Which is really weird, because sports TV, sports radio was a powerhouse for almost the last 10 years.
Yeah. Well, there's always going to be baseball. There's always going to be basketball.
Yeah, but there's always hockey, always football. Right. I mean, even people fucking watch and listen to golf.
Right.
There's a golf channel.
But the more streaming services you have, the more people that are leaving watching networks. And, that's why cable prices go up. because there aren't as many people subscribing to cable. So in order to maintain it, they have to sign a deal where $10 of my cable bill goes to ESPN, even though I don't fucking watch it.
Right.
And I don't have a choice to say, oh, keep that out of my subscription. I don't watch sports. No, you have no choice. You have to pay that.
The deal that they worked out with Time Warner or Comcast or whoever.
I'm telling you, 5 years from now, people remember.
Have you thought about cutting the cord?
No. I still have cable, and I will keep it until further notice. But YouTube now has their streaming service. DirecTV is on Roku. They advertise 50 channels. When they start getting towards 100 channels, and you realize, okay, I can have 100 channels for $40.
Right.
That's when I'm seriously going to consider cutting the cord.
Dude, we're at the point now, at least in our house, that we watch more Netflix and more Hulu than we do regular TV. Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for Game of Thrones, because we ditched Walking Dead. We're waiting for the last season of Game of Thrones, I think, and then once that hits, we're done.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, everything that, I see more entertaining stuff on Netflix and Hulu.
5 years from now, I'll make a prediction. 5 years from now, streaming service is going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 times bigger than what it is now. And either these networks are going to have to overpay even more because there's just no options out there, or the minute that YouTube and Netflix or Facebook or Amazon grabs UFC or grabs WWE or grabs,
I think it'll be Amazon.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, Amazon is the next one. Amazon's definitely the next one.
Well, Amazon just what do they override Google as the biggest company on earth?
Amazon. Yep. 10 years from now, you will have UFC or WWE or something else. Maybe WWE's will be on just in a network. I actually said that about a year or two ago, that the future of WWE programming, Raw and SmackDown, is on the WWE network.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
I hope that ends up being the way. And the other interesting thing, too, is, and just a little conversation about it, because I haven't really talked about it in a minute, but I was very happy to know that the cable companies kind of lost out with the net neutrality decision.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And I'm actually very happy about that. I'm kind of noticing, and I don't know if I'm thumbing my own nose at this, but I'm kind of noticing I'm having a lot of cable problems lately since that decision.
I wouldn't doubt that they are, maybe not, going out of their way to, I still have issues with my internet and cable. In fact, I swear on my parents, I swear on a stack of Bibles. Something really weird happened last night. I was up until almost 4 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
You and I were communicating online, and I was doing so, but I fell asleep around 4 o'clock, and I woke up at 6 because I had to get up and get my stuff ready for work today. And I go and hit the remote because I have one of these Harmony remotes that it's all digital. You push the network and it changes the channels, turns the TV on, turns the amp on, everything.
Yeah.
I hit the button to go to the network, and instead of doing channel 202, it's just doing 0, 3, 5. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with my remote? So I reboot the remote, and this is 6 o'clock in the morning. It's not working. So I go inside and I get the regular Spectrum remote. I fucking press channel 202, 7, 8, 1. So I'm like, okay, this is not just that. It's the cable box.
Right.
So I turn the cable box off, and I go in the other room, and I turn on the service in there. Same fucking thing is happening. So it was the cable. Cable's having these weird things happen. It's never happened before.
Ready to do something, dude. I really think that the cable companies, they've gotten so greedy that now they're going to punish people.
Yeah.
And if you think that, and this is my thought, because if you remember back in the day when I really snapped about Comcast and I lost my shit, I actually had somebody who listened to the show, who was apparently very important in Comcast, immediately send us over the fucking white glove service. Dude.
That's
the
good.
Next day we had fucking guys come in here. They're drilling new holes in the wall. They're replacing all the fucking equipment. Like, I mean, these guys went through everything, and I I didn't ask. It wasn't like I said, "Oh, if somebody at Comcast." No, dude, they fucking hit me up. So now, when shit like this happens with net neutrality and everything else like that, and now all of a sudden we're having issues, I don't doubt that I don't doubt at all. I know for a fact that there are important people in Comcast that have absolutely listened to Wrestling Soup, and absolutely your cable company. I think you have Time Warner, have absolutely listened to the Don Tony Kevin Gassel show.
Yeah, I've gotten little.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like there are, even though they will never come forward, they will never say, "Hey, we're a big fan of your show," because that's probably some kind of confidentiality thing. Blah blah blah. Who knows? You know, and it puts the company at a risk. But I don't doubt that these same people know who their biggest fans and detractors are.
Yeah, and that's why there was one guy on social media the other day that was taking a little shot towards me, Jay. But Jay's a good people, so I went along with it. He's like, "Oh, I was listening to some goofy podcast the other day," which I am goofy at times, so I take that with a badge of honor. And he says, I was talking about how, with the product and this and that, and he's like, he hasn't, like if you don't like what you're watching, like he went in his whole, and I saw you commented on there also, and he's basically saying like, look, if you don't like the WWE product, then you really need to take a stand, and you don't watch it, and you don't do this, and when enough people don't watch it, and and I'm like, basically what the guy was trying to say is, look, if you don't like something that bad, then you don't watch it. But the funny thing is, there's a lot of aspects of wrestling that I do like. It's not just, Monday's Raw happened to be the drizzling shits. But usually you always find something that, is halfway decent out of it. But no, I think when you speak out and you voice complaints and frustrations, and a lot of other people feel the same way, that's how people take notice. Sometimes when ratings go down, if nobody complains about it, you'll blame the economy. You'll say it's cyclical. You'll blame it on the playoffs. Oh no, we're good. It's just that people are finding other ways to listen to us. But now instead you hear a lot of people saying, no, your product sucks.
Right.
Or it's not as good as what it used to be. Or we have a big problem with this. Now, all of a sudden, you realize, okay, maybe this person is not paying attention to me in this relationship because there's something wrong, not because we're busy working all the time or we're busy. You know what I'm saying? Like you go to a restaurant and they give you a little card and you want to anonymously comment about how was the food, how was the service, how was this, how was that. If the people stop going there, and you are sure that your food is good, if you start reading cards and people are saying, no, the food is not as good as it used to be, this was tough, then you realize, okay, maybe we do have a problem with our product.
Right.
You can't blame, maybe not a lot of people go out to eat anymore because the gas prices are high. You need feedback. If you don't want to watch, don't watch. But you should also be vocal about it and tell people why you don't watch. Keeping silent, just having the ratings go down, I don't think that helps at all.